On today's episode of The Unwritten Rule, we've got the South Carolina recap, a tough one, heartbreaker for Mizzou in Columbia, South Carolina. We recap it, talked about everything, obviously Brady Cook being bad, how they managed the game, what went wrong at the end, got into all of it. Obviously a ton to talk about from a very, very eventful game for Mizzou and obviously a bummer result, but we've got a full recap. Kenny and Payton did that. This will be the last you hear of me for this show. I'll be back Friday, fear not. But Kenny and Payton have the recap for you guys for South Carolina. And yeah, just everything that went on in a crazy game as Mizzou kind of looks to bounce back from a really, really tough loss here near the end of the season. So Kenny and Payton will have that recap. And then they did quick hits, of course. Ken Sports Shorts, Tigers in the Wild, headlines, talk some Darius Robinson, got a little Cuonzo Martin shout out. And went back, revisited. I know they talked about Davion Hannah, the basketball recruit, on Friday. They touched on that as well with him not committing to Mizzou in the end. So Kenny and Payton gave their thoughts there as well. So good show. Unfortunate loss for Mizzou, of course, on Saturday. But we here at The Unwritten Rule allow us to be your therapy session, your chance to vent in the comments down below if you like about the loss. And we kind of sulked in it together as we try to look beyond and finish this season on a strong note if you are Mizzou. So without further ado, let's get into it. The Unwritten Rule starts right now.
Marcel, where are you going with that disc? You are not putting that on again. Marcel, okay, if you press that button, you are in very, very big trouble.
Attention. Everybody stop what you're doing. It's time for The Unwritten Rule, a Mizzou sports podcast brought to you by the Believe Network, alongside Peyton Haverman and Kenny Van Doren. Here is your host, Jack Knowlton.
Welcome back to The Unwritten Rule. Today is Monday, November 18th. And I lied. I said Jack Knowlton will be back by now, but he's still on his drive back from the Purdue-Alabama game. Purdue taking down the Crimson Tide. There's another loss for a team in the SEC, but we're not here to talk about basketball. We're not here to talk about SEC basketball. We're here to recap South Carolina against Mizzou, two ranked teams battling it out for the Mayor's Cup. South Carolina comes away with a 34-30 win, a lot closer game than the three of us predicted. Went down to the wire. It was a really entertaining game. There's a lot to talk about on multiple fronts. And I think one way to just kind of start it off, Peyton, I don't want you to unload everything on us right now, but I mean, what's just one word to describe just the outcome of this game, just how you felt after watching this one?
That's a good question, Kenny, because it's not, I don't want to say disappointing, because this was a game I thought Mizzou had really no shot in. And they really probably should have won it. To be honest with you, they left a lot of plays out there, but I'll go ahead and say, I just shocking a bit, because everything about that game shocked me. It was so much more back and forth than I would have ever imagined. I mean, it was just a really, really good game of football that Missouri didn't come out on the winning end of. And that happens. I won't, a lot of times when we watch college football, it all comes down to, like, college football fans have tunnel vision, and I'm guilty of it too. You know, when you lose a game, you think it's all like your own team's doing. Sometimes you just got to tip your cap, and that's the one thing I'll do, and then we'll break down the rest of it. I'll let you intro the rest of it. I'm just going to tip my cap to Lenore Sellers. That dude is a straight up gamer. When we came into the year, did our like half serious, half joking QB rankings, we had Sellers at like the bottom of the barrel because we just didn't know him. And early in the year, we were kind of getting proven right, but the last few weeks, he is a damn good player. You just got to tip your cap sometimes. And sure, you can maybe fault Missouri's tackling a little bit. Not getting Lenore Sellers on the ground probably didn't help a lot of things, but the guy's tough to tackle for everyone, not just Missouri. 5 touchdowns, 353 yards. when South Carolina needed plays, he made them. He's a redshirt freshman quarterback, and he played out of his mind. He was really, really good. So that sometimes is all it is. The other team made a play, and Lenora Sellers made several of them.
Mizzou, I mean, was in a good spot at a halftime. Blank South Carolina in the third quarter. There were some, issues there. Just in a couple fronts, both teams only combining for 6 points, with Mizzou getting that one touchdown. But in the second half, outscoring South Carolina 24-13 after trailing 21-6 at halftime. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball, though. I mean, leading up to this game, a lot of gamesmanship just from Eli Drinkwitz over the past 2 weeks, and I think it's warranted just kind of where this team is with a lot of injuries. And looking at the availability report, Brady Cook listed as doubtful most of the week, and then a game time decision there on Saturday with that right wrist heavily taped up, something he banged up in that Alabama game a couple of weeks ago. But first start since the Alabama game. Initially, Payton, I think just from my perspective too, I think someone pointed out, his arm, slot looked a little bit different the way he was throwing. And that's going to happen too when you're battling, coming back from that upper body is what they have it listed as, but wrist, hand injury, and then also the ankle. I think he played a pretty good game. I think there was that, mishap at the end of the second quarter going into halftime where he's spinning the ball and just totally loses it. But from your perspective, though, I mean, what was your kind of initial takeaway just from Brady being back at the helm?
I thought Brady played he played a fine game. He made plays. It was just really like a matter of early on, and this isn't all the offense's fault in general. I mean, they just didn't finish drives early on until it was probably too late. They first drive of the game, I mean, Drinkwitz, they won the toss and elected to receive it, which I hate when teams do that, but they had a good script. Clearly, they were very confident in it. Brady made a nice throw across the middle to Theo Weiss, and really, I thought Brady looked pretty solid for most of this game. The interception at the end, I literally could not care less about something like that. And most importantly, I mean, when the game was really on the line for Missouri, the last 2 drives, Brady Cook went, and the offense went touchdown. The defense was the one that really didn't hold up its end of the bargain in the end. But I think Brady played a nice game. That last throw that when they had a chance, they didn't have a chance with 15 seconds left. Was literally Brady Cook reading the coverage, checking into a different play, and hitting Luther Burden on a perfect throw. To that would have been it's really, that's the most disappointing thing out of this game, was that play is ultimately completely meaningless and will wind up being somewhat forgotten. I probably won't forget about it, but to most normal people that aren't sickos that consume everything Mizzou, they're going to completely forget about that play. And that's a shame, because those two have brought so much joy and just have made this program fun to watch the last 2 years. It would have been really fitting for them to have that moment there, but all for naught.
It was a pretty impressive touchdown play altogether. Looking over, a corner on a fourth down play after just nothing was kind of working there. That's why I think you're seeing a Cook that a lot of people were kind of worried about, that he probably wasn't going to play the remainder of the season. Rumors speculating that the wrist injury was going to keep him out. And he might even be the guy that, looking back in that 2022 season when he had a torn labrum that no one knew about, and he played through it and still caught a lot of flack for that injury. So he's definitely a guy who has a lot of heart and he's going to play through those things. But yeah, it is certainly a tough thing, that touchdown will probably not be remembered too much from the end of this game. Nate Noel, though, staying on this offensive side of the ball, 27 rushes, 150 yards, 1 touchdown, bursted for a 23-yard run. Just watching him, it looked like it was the healthiest you've seen Nate Noel in recent weeks, even going back to the UMass game where he was a late scratch, looked like something along the lines of some back tightness, back discomfort. But he looks like he's back to his former self. And even Quan Lacey, he had some good snaps in this game, 3 attempts for 12 yards. What was just kind of your takeaway just from seeing him back and taking the lion's share at running back?
Yeah, I mean, it was the first game that both Brady and Noel started since Auburn. And Noel does look like he's probably back to 100% now. He was a difference maker in this game. And look, I don't know if I'd put all of that on just Nate Noel. Not taking anything away. He was great. Save for one play in this game where he forgot which side he had to run through. But it wound up not mattering. Brady Cook made a play, bailed him out. But Nate Noel was excellent in this game. But man, I thought, and not just run blocking, but pass pro as well. I was really concerned about how Mizzou matched up against this D line. The offensive line, tip of the hat. They played, I think, their best game of the season. Armand Membu, in particular. I don't know if Mizzou's going to get another year out of him. He is just such a monster. He's had a lot of great moments at Mizzou, but I thought that was truly his best game as a Missouri Tiger. It was almost a throwback to 2023, really. I mean, him and Cameron Johnson last year, a big reason that, yes, Cody Schrader obviously is a huge part of it, but a big reason Mizzou had so much success towards the end of last year, especially in the run game, they just executed wide zone perfectly. And Cameron Johnson and Armand Membu were absolutely stout yesterday. I was so impressed with the two of them in the run game. Drake Heismeyer, hats off to him as well. I've always kind of picked on Heismeyer because he played in the Gasparilla Bowl and was real bad. And I didn't like that he was laughing in the middle of a blowout earlier this year, but he has stepped in and played really well as himself. I thought Caden Green was all right. Marcus Bryant didn't get destroyed. South Carolina, I think, had 1 or 2 sacks in this game, but really great game from the O-line. And the biggest beneficiary of that, if not Brady Cook, was Nate Noel, because he, to his credit, in a way that I don't think Marcus Carroll has, he reacts much quicker when he sees a hole. He was not afraid to cut back, one cut and go at times. I thought Nate Noel was really good. He looked very healthy, like you said. That's a bit of a game changer for Mizzou's offense because, I mean, Noel, I always anticipated him just being kind of the change of pace back coming into the year, but he's definitely RB1 on this team. Like you mentioned as well, Kawan Lacey officially burned his red shirt. Only had 8 snaps total in this game, but you knew where he was on every one of those snaps. Very impactful, had a nice catch and run. Gave him 3 straight carries in the red zone. So clearly they think the world of Kawan Lacey. I think we're going to see a lot of him. Maybe not the rest of this year, maybe in the bowl game, but next year. Definitely someone I think I'd be very, very excited about.
Yeah, it seems like the running back position is in the right direction too, especially when you have 2 transfer guys in right now that are seeing the most, in Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll, and Kawan Lacey and Jamal Roberts are definitely taking steps forward to impact this team offensively next season. On that topic, though, of offensive lineman, Armand Membu had the highest PFF grade at 86.6. Drake Heismeyer right behind him at 78.8. And just inside that top 7, you have 2 more offensive line with Cameron Johnson at 3rd at 77.9, and then Caden Green tied for 7th with 73.9. Altogether, just a pretty strong performance from that offensive line against one of the best defensive line units in the country. Payton, I think it's a good time to kind of pivot.
Is this season? Because why is Connor Tollison on there?
Oh, this is current grades for this season. Excuse me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a good time to just kind of pivot here to where some of the weird things that were happening kind of in this game, some things that maybe controlled the overall performances of this game, from game calling to maybe some, you don't want to always blame the refs, and you're not a guy to do that, Payton. But I mean, kind of just jump into some of that where things just kind of got out of hand, and it was just things not in Missouri's control.
Yeah, I've never been it's people's favorite thing to do watching sports. Is your team playing poorly? Yes, must be officials' fault. I hate doing that. That said, I mean, there was just some flat out garbage officiating yesterday. I mean, that whole sequence with just the 4th down that South Carolina went for, just not being able to get, Lenore Sellers on a QB sneak was like a good 3 feet short. Very clearly, they marked him 3 feet short, and one guy immediately pointed first down. I was losing my mind watching that. And right before that, I mean, they had the review when South Carolina didn't get it beforehand, but basically was given a do-over because of a late review call. It wasn't like they were calling horrible penalties on every play. They did have one penalty I disagreed with. I thought Cameron Johnson's unnecessary roughness is what we'll call it, because that's what they called it. I thought that was a bad call, and it cost Missouri 3 points potentially. Maybe not. Blake Craig is not a very good kicker, but it was just a very poor, like, it was just not managed well. The fourth quarter opened with them forgetting to put 15 minutes on the clock, and Missouri snapped the ball, and it's hard to say for sure because, it's the whistles blew right away. Obviously, players aren't going to play full speed after that point. It looked like Missouri had 6 on that play. Nate Noel looked like he was at worst going to bounce it out, get a first down. And I thought it looked like a lot more was going to come out of it, but they had to blow it dead to put 15 minutes on the clock because they forgot to do it in the 4 minutes between the quarter. It was just poorly managed by the officiating crew. It wasn't like I'm not going to say the fix was in or anything. And hell, even though Missouri had 6 wiped from the board on that drive, potentially, a few plays later, they had 4th and 1 inside the 15, and they opted to just kick the field goal. I did not agree with that call. There were a few game management decisions from Drink & Co. that I just did not agree with, especially throwing on 3rd and 1 and not getting it. And then I just didn't like that whole sequence. Again, officiating might have wiped 6 off the board on that drive, but by no means did it cost Mizzou the game or anything like that. It was just very poorly managed. And it just makes watching the game, like, it's harder to watch when you have to watch officials congregate for 15 minutes because they don't really know if they made the right call or not constantly.
Yeah, no matter whose side you're on either, it's a tough thing to watch when officials are dictating the game based on them not following the rules correctly, or just those little things like time not being on the clock. I think it's head scratching from both sides, and you don't want to blame it all on that. Mizzou had opportunities to win this game. They stayed in it a lot closer than many had anticipated. I'm going to give those offensive lineman grades real quick. These are ones from the actual game. Armand Membu was the top performer at 83.1. Cameron Johnson was 4th. The right guard at 74.5. And then you get down to Marcus Bryant, who was 7th at 70.3. So 3 of those guys within the top 7 is good to see after that game against that defensive line. I got 3 more things just from just not maybe officiating or just different weird calls that kind of happened early in the game when Theo Weiss made that catch that was ruled a ball that hit the ground. And I feel like some people had debates about if that ball was actually a catch or not.
I'm pretty sure it was incomplete.
Okay.
There was a replay that showed the ball bouncing, I think. I think that was incomplete. I don't like that we didn't get to see a review for that, but I'm pretty sure that it was not a catch. And that was a bad ball from Brady. It was Brady, again, maybe it's the wrist, but it was a throw Brady had to make and he did not make.
And just, another one that was like that. And this one was a little bit more evidence rewatching that one was the Mekhi Miller catch where he caught another one off the ground, but that one definitely skimmed the ground before he caught it. And then the last one was, and this is one where it kind of goes both ways. And I don't necessarily think this was a flag, but there was a defensive lineman for South Carolina into the second half that a pass was thrown by Brady. And then immediately, just helmet to helmet, put him on the ground.
It was like his arm. He put his arm right through his face.
Went straight through him. Then kind of put his arms up at the end to make it seem like he didn't mean it. I didn't necessarily feel like it was probably intentional at the time, but I mean, just what was your kind of just takeaway from that one not being called?
Again, that's one that didn't wind up mattering. Mizzou wound up scoring a touchdown on that drive. I kind of agree with you. It looked a little bang to me, but there was he did really kind of put his arm right through the head. It didn't matter in the end. It had no bearing on the game down the line. I don't think Demetrius Knight made another play in that game that mattered. But it was one that I think probably was more targeting than not. But it could have gone either way. I really wasn't bothered by that much I wasn't bothered by many penalties or lack thereof penalty calls in this game. It was mostly just like game management from the officials.
I think it's a good time to kind of spin this to the defensive side of the ball as we're talking about some things that probably didn't go Mizzou's way, just multiple factors. But just from the defensive side, though, Payton, I mean, who was really kind of a standout for you? Let's look at some of the positives, and we'll maybe talk about the secondary, maybe the safety play.
I didn't see many positives, I'll be honest with you. Johnny Walker had a really good game, actually, up until what he's probably going to be remembered from this game for, and that was having Lenoris Sellers having his arms on Lenoris Sellers' shoulder pads and having him maybe a foot from the ground. I mean, he was bent over, like about to go down on 3rd and 10. That really, I think that would have sealed the game, to be honest with you. But instead, Sellers breaks free. 2-3 plays later, South Carolina takes the lead back. Yeah, I really don't have a positive, I'll be honest. I thought the defense played really bad in this game. I thought the D tackles made a couple plays. I'll give Missouri's defense credit for this. South Carolina came into this game, and at times it felt like Shane Beamer was coaching to send a message and not to win the game. There was that long drive in the first half that was like 15 plays, and the last 13 were runs. A lot of defenses in that scenario would break because they gave up 2 4th down conversions earlier in the drive, and South Carolina went for a 3rd one. A lot of defenses would break in that situation and just fold. Mizzou's did not do that. They got a big stop. Christian Williams, I have had really big issues with the leadership on this team at times. Christian Williams made a great play on that 4th down when his unit really needed it. It was a captain play, and they made the play. They made a few huge 4th down stops. They kept Mizzou in it for a bit, but it was really more. At times, it just felt more like South Carolina doing it to themselves. Like Shane Beamer, and the broadcast kept bringing it up over and over. He wanted to control the line of scrimmage in this game because Mizzou had manhandled South Carolina on both sides of the line of scrimmage the last 3 years in this series. I mean, it was not close. And he tried to make it a point to do it in this game, and they didn't do it, really. What really killed Mizzou was the air game. And eventually South Carolina relented and just aired it out. But yeah, there's not one player I could point at and say that guy played well. Caleb Flagg got on the field a lot in this game. He didn't play well. Nwaneri got on the field for some key pass rush snaps, but I don't think he really made a play. I mean, he wasn't out there much, so I won't blame him really. But yeah, overall, I don't think anyone really played all that well. Just kind of my take on it. I thought the best player on in that game on that side of the ball is the one that will probably catch the most flack because of his 2 really key missed tackles, and that's Johnny Walker.
One thing that just really stood out to me, and this was on one of those passing touchdowns, and it seemed like all those plays in the first half, the way that South Carolina was getting away with things was just these explosive plays. Just one guy not covering, one guy not staying in his zone. Marvin Burks Jr., it just seems like a reoccurring kind of issue that's been going on.
Terrible.
He's keeping his eyes in the backfield. He's not noticing when the corner is giving up the receiver and sending him on to his zone. And there was just that streak down the left side of the field, just wide open. And just kind of moving forward, I saw someone even joke on a message board, if he's going to keep his eyes in the backfield, put him at linebacker, get him out of the safety position. And he's not that big enough to do that. But where do you kind of go forward? You're playing 2 teams in the season that are very beatable for Mizzou's side, especially Mississippi State on the road. you don't have the safety depth, and safety is gonna be one of the biggest things that they're gonna be looking at in the transfer portal, if not the biggest. What do you kind of just do moving forward, just with the safety play?
I mean, there's not much you can do at this point. These are your guys. You can't make a trade in season. The secondary in general is just kind of a mess. And look, I don't want to turn. A lot of people are gonna really get angry at Corey Batoon for this game, and it's somewhat deserved. Maybe completely deserved. I'll be honest. He did not call a great game yesterday, but you got to keep in perspective. Missouri came into this year having lost their three big starters in the secondary to the NFL draft, and that's probably the best corner duo in team history in Chris Abrams-Drain and Ennis Rakestraw, and J.C. Carles, who is now a starter for the Indianapolis Colts. There was no world where they were going to get better, but the problem is they, for whatever reason, only made one move at corner in Toriano Pride, and he's already lost his job. It's not even really a rotation if you look at the snap count anymore. I mean, it's Nick DeLoach's job now. One thing I'll say that you can do to maybe help is probably not play man coverage very much anymore. This secondary just can't do it. I don't blame Batoon for trying it kind of down the stretch, because he probably wanted to try and just get some pass rush on Sellers. But man, that crosser, like, just being hit right on DeLoach because DeLoach just got burned so bad. That was the play that really kind of felt like it lost the game for Mizzou. So I would probably venture to say you won't see much man coverage called by Batoon anymore, which opens up a lot of other problems, but it's just kind of what you got to do right now. The safety play, I mean, Charleston's a 3-year starter. He is what he is at this point. He's not bad in coverage at all, but he will just have some of the worst missed tackles you've ever seen in your life, including that last touchdown play. It was such a bad whiff. Marvin Burks, I don't know what to do anymore. He's making the same mistakes. He looked really encouraging the first few games of the year, but he just can't keep his eyes out of the backfield. I wouldn't be shocked to see Mizzou add like 3 or 4 safeties in the portal or something like that, and a couple corners as well. I mean, that is, I tweeted half jokingly after this game, the portal wish list for me is going to be QB. Obviously, Brady's out of eligibility. I don't think you can feel comfortable with Pine and Horn being your only 2 guys really in contention to start. Then I would add 8 safeties and 5 cornerbacks. And, you know, it's half joking, but they do need to add there. It's clear that Philip Roche has fallen out of favor with this coaching staff. He played a lot last year. He can't see the field anymore. Caleb Flagg has apparently passed him up on the depth chart. And it's just kind of a bad room right now. It needs to be reshaped pretty massively by the portal, I'd say.
I think a name I'll throw out there too, just because he's been on special teams a good amount, and he's gotten some positive reviews. He was heavily recruited just by Eli Drinkwitz in that 2023 class, or 2024 class, excuse me. Is Trajan Greco. Like you said, you're not going to be able to like just transform this defense with 2 games left in the season. You're not going to be able to just plug these guys in, but maybe you do see Trajan Greco have some good practices these next 2 weeks, and maybe see some snaps late into those games if they can pull away against Mississippi State and Arkansas, and that'd be a good spot moving forward for a freshman who's seen a lot of playing time. Just where this kind of defense goes forward, though, playing Mississippi State, a team that's at the bottom of the SEC, and then Arkansas that's kind of been in the middle. They've had wins over Tennessee. They played close at other teams. What do you want to see just from this defense? I know takeaways has been a big thing. They haven't had these chaos plays, like you mentioned, getting burned. Dalen Carnell getting burned. Some of these guys just couldn't keep up with some of these South Carolina wide receivers. What does this defense have to prove to you next week?
I mean, look, I don't think long term I'm concerned about Corey Batoon or anything like that. It's just the talent isn't there really this year. They lost so much on that side of the ball. it was never going to get better, and you saw that last night. All I really want to see from them is just don't lose games. Really, I mean, you're playing a bad Mississippi State team. They have just been a mess all year. I just like to see them come away with a win in that one. Don't really care how it looks at this point in either game. Taylon Green and Arkansas, it's going to be... Taylon Green is not near as good as Lenoris Sellers, but you're going to have to account for his legs like you did with Lenoris Sellers. I'd like to see them be able to get a little more of a pass rush. I'd like to just see the corners and the safeties, like, just not get burned so bad. Like, you get beat as, like, playing football. More often than not, the guy that you're throwing to is going to come down with the ball. But it's just the constant burns that Mizzou's secondary is getting. Like, the screen pass at the end of the first half yesterday. That, I mean, look, I could rant about the way that end of half was managed, but twice in the last 2 minutes, Mizzou's defense got totally burned. The last 2 drives of the fourth quarter, they got completely burned. I mean, it's just stuff that you can't have happen in that situation. And this isn't a secondary thing either. It's just got to be a whole team-wide thing. The tackling effort cannot be ever as bad as it was in this game ever again. I mean, if you just look at the PFF grades, the tackle grades are an absolute joke. Johnny Walker, 43.6 tackle grade. Christian Williams had a where'd he go? I lost him. Christian Williams, 32.8. Go if you could go back there for me, Kenny. Chuck Hicks, 27.5. You're a 6-year player, man. This is your 6th year in college football. Nick Deloach, 34.2. Marvin Burks, 29.3. Caleb Flagg, 37.0. That's just too many guys having that paltry of an effort wrapping up. I'm sure that's going to be a point of emphasis in the room this week, and it deserves to be. I mean, it is totally probably the biggest reason they actually lost that game. Just the lack of tackling.
I'll take a quick look just at special teams before we wrap this up and just kind of get some final thoughts on anything we missed from this game. Payton, you brought it up, though. Blake Craig is still struggling. He did have a miss in this game from 49. Just, I mean, kind of moving forward, it is kind of very hard to replace the thicker kicker, what Harrison Mevis accomplished for Mizzou. And even at times he had games back in 2022, a loss at Auburn where the Mizzou should have won that game. It should have never gone to overtime. But Blake Craig was a highly touted kicking recruit. You know, there was a lot of positives there. Is this a coaching thing to you? We're not in that room. They don't really open up too much about coordinators or assistants. Just where does this special teams unit have to go? We mentioned Eric Link, even mentioning with you on the side that if this game comes down to anything, if it's close, it might be a special teams issue just because of who Beamer is and who Eric Link is. Wasn't necessarily that. Just your thoughts on the kicking performances.
I'm not a Blake Craig fan, really. He's not accurate. He's 1 for 6 on kicks from 40 to 49. That's just not good. He's not a good kicker. It kind of is what it is. Maybe he'll be good in a couple of years. I mean, he is just a redshirt freshman, and we were obviously spoiled by Mevis coming in and just being an all-world kicker pretty quickly. I'm sure part of it's coaching, but end of the day, there's not much to coach. I mean, Blake Craig needs to line up and make his kicks. Eric Link is not a good coordinator. I think Missouri would be better off replacing him. I've made that very clear. But I don't put much of Blake Craig's success or failures on him. Much as long as it's not like an operation issue, like the snaps aren't coming in like wobbly or the hold is getting like, it's just as long as it's not something like that. That's not coaching to me. That's just a kicker not doing his job.
I'll throw one thing out there because we didn't mention this. One of those kick returns was an end around toss to another returner in Nick Harbor. What was just kind of your takeaway on seeing that and not being able to stop it?
That was another missed tackle, really. They actually were in good position. It's just That was some Beamer ball stuff, and Missouri didn't snuff it out like they should have, but it is what it is, really. That didn't win or lose them the game either.
Exactly. Payton, I feel like we covered a lot here. Just anything else? Did we miss anything? Just final thoughts on the South Carolina Mizzou game.
Yeah, I think. Well, you got to address the elephant in the room. The playoff hopes are now dead. They were pretty. It was slim to none before, but Slim walked out the door with that one. Really, I'm just kind of bummed that like Luther Burden has like. You got to remember, like it was never cool to come to Mizzou for recruits until Luther Burden did it. He really is kind of the first face you'll think of when you think of kind of this era of Missouri football. And I'm sad for him that he kind of hasn't had the year he probably was hoping for, and he had that moment and it was ultimately meaningless. So I'm bummed about that. Last thing from me on this game probably has to be addressed. The end of half coaching is just I don't know how Drinkwitz continuously messes it up. It's you give up the touchdown, and look, there were more than just end of half situations that were botched in this game. Missouri got a turnover on downs and immediately punted like 6 plays later, and they got an interception, took it all the way down to the 30. That drive ended with a missed with 0 points. But man, you give up that touchdown. And I know Drinkwitz has always said we have to like make sure that like we get our first down before we try and really score at the end of a half. And at that point, it was 14-6. So sure, you don't have to be super aggressive, but when Nate Noel takes that first down carry on the 2-minute drive and goes out of bounds, you have to adjust there and be like, okay, we need to throw it because we need to make sure we get a first down. Because then they decided to hand it off again. South Carolina used their second timeout, throw a drag route. They tackle him short. South Carolina used their third timeout. They get the ball with like 1:40. Nothing was accomplished by that drive. And then they get the ball back with like 40 seconds left and move the ball a decent amount. It's like flip the again. It's just we've talked about it to death. Drinkwitz is just not a great in-game tactician. You kind of have to take it with the good and the bad. But in a game this close, it's hard to not look back on that and feel like it was a big factor of you losing the game. Again, Missouri was the better team in this game, I think, for a lot of it. They had more opportunities. They left points on the board. I totally forgot. The worst official call of this game was that 2-point conversion that they blew dead. I thought that was way too early and that changed something, but I was going to bring that up because it was points Mizzou left on the board because Craig missed a field goal. That changes up. If you have those 3 points, you probably don't go for 2 there. So there's 4 points you're probably missing in a game you lost by 4. Again, I thought the end of half situation management was just really putrid because that's not Kirby Moore that was calling those plays. That's Drinkwitz going, no, we need to make sure that we pick up our first down. So we need to run the ball and try and get them to use their timeouts because Drinkwitz has said that's his strategy before. And it sucks, Drink. Please change up the 2-minute and end of half strategy because it might have just lost you the game.
That's something too when talking to this team a lot in 2022 is that there is a lot of input being tossed around. There's a reason why every position coach is wearing a headset, why they're talking constantly. But it does come down to Eli's decision and how he's game managing there. And you've seen issues back to 2023, 2022 and seasons past where the Tigers just weren't in the correct spots to put points on the board and kind of came away, got lucky in some instances when you look at Kansas State last year and just some other games. But it is definitely something the Tigers need to work on with Drinkwitz at the helm. Missouri picks up its 3rd loss in the season, 7-3 now. There is an opportunity to finish the year 9-2 with 2 games, or 9-3 with 2 games left on the schedule, that being Mississippi State on the road this upcoming Saturday, November 23rd at 2:15 or 3:15 Central Time. It's going to be on SEC Network. And then finishing up the season after Thanksgiving, that Saturday against Arkansas It was a Black Friday game the last couple of years, but now this game is going to be on Saturday. There's still no time, or the window is from 2:30 to 3:30 for that one. So that's where the Tigers kind of look like for the rest of the season. But that's probably going to do it for our recap of this game, and we'll jump over to quick hits now. All right, quick hits time. Before we get to our Tigers in the Wild, Payton, I got a quick Ken Sports Shorts for you this week, and I think this is a fun one. This is like the single game touchdowns, single game touchdowns for passing touchdowns. In Mizzou history for like a single game. It's been accomplished multiple times by only 3 quarterbacks with 5 or more. Can you name all 3 quarterbacks?
Drew Lock, Blaine Gabbert, Chase Daniel.
You got 2 of those correct in Drew Lock and Chase Daniel. Blaine Gabbert's not on this list. There is one more quarterback. He only did this once in 2014 against Toledo with 5.
Matty Mock.
That is correct. Matty Mock did it. I'll go down
Dang.
the list because it is pretty fun. Drew Lock, of course, has the most. I think this has been thrown out a couple times in the past couple of years, but he had 7 against Missouri State in 2017. He has second place as well with 6 against Idaho in 2017. And then third is a combination of him, Chase Daniel, and Matty Mock with 5, spanning from 2006 to 2017. That 2006 game for Chase Daniel with 5 was against Murray State.
Wow. Look at that.
Little
Very strong competition.
Yeah, that's a quick, easy Ken Sports Shorts this week. I thought it was funny that there was all those guys and one guy, Matty Mock, who Mizzou expected a little bit more from in his college career. Okay, my Tiger in the Wild. This is a fun one. This comes from Kyle Helms of ABC 17. But Darius Robinson, if you probably saw him on the sideline, he had a pretty fun shirt on, pretty loud, green, blue, and white with some stripes. With the Arizona Cardinals being on bye this week, he had an opportunity to go to this game, Mizzou against South Carolina. And did remind me because this happened back in the 2022 game. If you remember this, Larry Roundtree, who had already graduated, was in the NFL, was on the sidelines at that game.
Mayor's Cup means that much, man. Guys, alum are coming back to come and see it.
Yeah, Martez Manuel got to do the little pregame video for the Tigers as well. A lot of connections in this rivalry. It's just South Carolina came away with this year. Payton, what is your Tiger in the Wild?
My Tiger in the Wild is going to be John Tonje. This is going to be painful to some. He in an upset win over number 9 over Arizona. By the way, he's at Wisconsin now, if you didn't know. He had 41 points. He went 8 for 14 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3-point range, had 6 boards, and went an astounding 21 for 22 from the line. Look, I don't blame Dennis and everyone for just kind of wanting to move on after a very injury-mired, disappointing season last year. Dennis and them could not bank on his health coming off an 0-19 year. They needed results. And Tonje probably just wanted a fresh start. It was not a good situation he was in last year. So good for him. I don't blame Mizzou for not keeping him, but it does. I mean, it's going to sting a little seeing someone do that.
It wasn't his first option either. He was committed to New Mexico State or New Mexico?
New Mexico, yeah.
He was going to be with New Mexico, ended up getting this opportunity at the Big Ten level. Congrats to him that he got to do that, and he's been working his tail off in these first couple games. I know that there is a little bit of like Wisconsin and Arizona rivalry, especially like in tournaments, with the 2 schools being in different conferences. You don't see that too often, especially with one of them not really being a huge basketball school. In the past couple of years with Wisconsin, even though they were in a Final Four not too long ago, just haven't seen as much success. But always a huge basketball school. I'm going to take that back. But not in the success region, I'll say that as Arizona has. But these 2 teams have had some history, and so this was pretty big in the eyes of Jack Knowlton as well. And on that conversation of talking about our good friend Jack, who decided not to be here. He also has his Tiger in the Wild being basketball.
Not to be here.
And that's Cuonzo Martin. Cuonzo Martin's Missouri State Bears are 2-1 to start the season, and their next game is first UT Arlington, of course.
Wow.
Where Payton Haberman goes to school right now, but it is at home in Springfield, Missouri, so Payton will not be able to attend this game. But the reason he chose him is that, like we mentioned, Jack was at the Purdue-Alabama basketball game for work this past weekend, And Cuonzo Martin was a part of the Purdue basketball pregame video. In the
Boiler up.
video, it was a lot of former Purdue players, former Boilermakers, yelling "Whose house? Our house," something that Purdue has kind of established, as some other schools do it as well. And he did it. And one of the things he wanted me to point out about it is that everyone had their highlights, and it was them saying it over them. And then for Cuonzo Martin, it was just a zoomed in shot of his face with a white background and him just yelling "Whose house? Our house." I do remember once he was let go by Missouri a couple years ago, he went to go watch his son play for Purdue. Like, it was, this is my favorite basketball player, I'm going to see him play. He is now with Missouri State, and their only loss so far this year was Butler in their season opener.
Who is that? Their first one against Moso State.
Missouri Southern State.
Southern. I've actually never heard of that.
It's in Joplin.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
The Lions.
If you are watching us and you are from Joplin, there's a pitcher for the Astros. His name is Logan Van Wy, and he attended that school and signed as a UDFA.
I'm sure they're thrilled.
Yeah. All right, headlines. This is my easy one every single week. This poll doesn't mean too much anymore, and I actually wanted to check one thing while we're looking at the AP poll, because our friend Emily Liker, who worked at the Missourian with us, it looks like she is no longer actually a part of it because she took a job, as we mentioned, covering the Vikings. So we won't be able to look at her poll. Well, we do know some other people, just Missouri grads. They're everywhere. You know how it is. Looking at the top 25, though, if this poll went to 26, your Missouri Tigers would still be ranked, but falling out of the ranking this week and in the coaches poll. So it is just Washington State there at 25.
By 5 points, too. That's a bummer. But again, Missouri wins out, they'll be back in. They'll be back in the poll. They'll be probably in the 20s range, maybe high teens if enough chaos breaks their way. Going into the bowl game, I mean, 9-3 going into a bowl, potential to end the year with 10 wins again, double-digit wins, and ranked in back-to-back years. A lot worse ways you could go. I think if you had told Mizzou fans a few years ago that could be the case, I think they'd all take that without a second thought.
Payton, what was your headline for this week?
My headline this week is going to be Inside the NBA. This is just a fun one. Inside the NBA, the beloved TNT show, basketball pregame show that has been just, you've seen the clips. Come on. With Ernie Johnson, Kenny the Jet Smith, Shaquille O'Neal, and Charles Barkley. ESPN and ABC are apparently picking up the rights to Inside the NBA, which is really funny because the headline I picked is reports Inside the NBA to air on ESPN/ABC next season. This is on ESPN itself, so they didn't confirm their own report or anything. But yeah, so Inside the NBA is not going anywhere, thank goodness. I know Chuck is retiring after the year. I'm pretty sure he said that. So that's a bummer, but it's cool to see this show still around. I think everyone loves it. It's a good way. I know some people who, and it doesn't represent the majority of basketball fans. They always make fun of or like just diss the show for not really giving a whole ton of serious commentary. There's plenty of other avenues to go get that. It's a very funny show. I think everyone appreciates it. So it's good to see it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, that was my only takeaway. They aggregated themselves. It's just ESPN News Services is who they tagged as the writer, and just seeing reports and then according to multiple reports. That's pretty hilarious to me.
Yeah.
You just want to get your SEO, you want to get it out there, but also just not give it away that they're confirming it just yet. Jack's headline for the week.
Look at you, journalist man.
And comes straight from Jack Knowlton himself. We mentioned Davion Hannah was trending towards Alabama in our Friday preview episode, and that is exactly where he committed to. I actually got a future casting for this one, so I did get my points. Shouldn't always take credit for those, but he was trending towards Alabama, and that's where he ended up. And got some good quotes in here, of course, from Rob Cassidy, who was the basketball recruiting director. But this is from Payton, or from Jack, and he wrote it himself. So nice plug from him. Nothing really too much more to talk about this. We talked about how Mizzou was in the mix there, but ended up going to the SEC team with a little bit, not even a little, with better success in the past 5 years.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Mizzou's going to add anyone else in the high school class. They've been linked to nobody else as far as I know. So
that's it for headlines. This quick ratio just from Jack. I think a lot of people saw this, but Michigan, I believe it's just Michigan made at Detroit Talk 313 replied to an injury report update from the Portland Trailblazers actual account saying Anthony Simons is out with a chest injury or will not return to tonight's game against Minnesota. Michigan made said, "There goes everyone's parlay. SMH injuries are ruining the fun of sports betting and rigging it at an all-time high." And the Portland Trailblazers were easy on this one. Just looked up the 1-800-GAMBLER number just on Google, on Safari, whatever they're using. And it was just a quick description of what 1-800-GAMBLER is. And that got 122,000 likes, 10,000 quotes and retweets, and 673 replies, 6.7 million views. And Detroit Made had 646 likes and 165 replies. It's always fun when teams do this. I like when they kind of go out of the comfort zone and reply like this. And this was an easy one, kind of a layup. No pun intended.
Sports betting has ruined the way people consume and watch sports, and it really kind of makes me sad. Every time I see something like this, it's pretty funny to me. Look, I'm not shaming anyone for sports betting, but I mean, there's a lot of people that just aren't fans of sports anymore. They just watch the sport to gamble on it. And that's just not fun to me, but to each their own, I guess.
Payton, before we get out of here, give us your joke.
Oh, I got a joke. All right, Kenny, don't you worry. This one comes from our favorite TV series, The Today Show. Kenny, why did the rabbit go to the salon?
To get its hair done.
Pretty close. It was having a bad hair day.
That's good.
HARE.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Was it first to the salon, or the tortoise beat it? That's going to do it for us on the Unwritten Rule. We'll be back on Friday to preview some basketball and preview the Tigers' second to last game of the season against Mississippi State. But until then, have a good week, and we'll be back with Jack. I hope everyone got my joke there. Reversing on Payton. The tortoise did beat the hare to the salon that day. But have a good week, and we'll see you guys on Friday.